Hello world, it's Austin. Let's talk about being transgender and Christian. So I've been thinking a lot lately about what it means to take the Bible seriously. Sometimes I get into conversations with people who have different ideas about scripture than I do, and they'll just end the conversation with saying, well, you just don't take the Bible seriously. I think what they actually mean is you don't take the Bible literally, or maybe you don't put enough emphasis on the passages that I think are important. But do we have to take the Bible literally in order to take it seriously? And how do we figure out which parts of the Bible are the most important? Like, does the story of Jonah and the whale have to have as much bearing on our lives as Jesus' command to love each other? So I've talked before about the literal views of the Bible in the videos on Genesis 1 and 2, which you can find over here, so I won't go into it again. But long story short, I'm one of those people that takes the Bible seriously, but not literally. I believe that it is true, but not necessarily historically accurate. I think that taking the Bible seriously has to do with intentionally ensuring that the Bible affects the way we live our lives. I think it looks like reading Luke chapter 3 verse 11, where John the Baptist tells the person with 2 coats to give one to somebody who doesn't have a coat, and reading that and then going home and packing up all your extra clothes and sending them to Goodwill. That's what taking the Bible seriously looks like, actually doing the thing the Bible tells you to do. The trick, as is always the case with the Bible, is figuring out which passages the author means metaphorically and which passages they actually mean, like, for our real lives, like, literally. And then, of course, we have to figure out if a passage is still relevant for our lives today. I've found that there's sort of one really good test for figuring out which pieces of scripture need to be way up there on the list of important things for our lives. The test goes like this. First, find the number of times a theme is mentioned in scripture. Prohibitions that are only mentioned once or twice, like planting more than one kind of seed in a field or dressing outside gender boundaries, are not as important as things that are mentioned a ton of times, like feeding the hungry and resting on the Sabbath. So then, once you've got that list of things that are mentioned a whole bunch of times, as Christians we have to look at Jesus' ministry and see which of those things Jesus really emphasized. That leaves you with a list of really important things that we have to enact in our lives if we want to be real about our faith. Obviously, there are different schools of thought on the process of figuring out which pieces of scripture are most important, but this one makes sense to me. And it's one of the reasons why I have a hard time getting on board with people who think that same-gender marriage is like the most important faith issue of our time. There are all of about 3 verses that talk about same-gender relationships, while there are over 25 verses that talk about feeding the hungry. But which issue gets more news coverage and which issue gets more campaign dollars? Anyway, what I have found is that even when you narrow things down to like a really important list of things in the Bible, that list is really hard to follow. We're told over and over again to feed the hungry and to clothe the naked and to visit people in prison. We're told to welcome the homeless into our homes. This stuff is hard as heck and doesn't appear to be metaphorical. Following Jesus' teachings means realizing that each and every time he meets with somebody who has money, whether they're a tax collector or a rich ruler, he tells those people to give their money away to those that need it. Every single time. In our little group of people on the planet who identify as transgender, we have more than our fair share of people who need help. Recent research tells us that 1 in 5 transgender people in the United States experiences homelessness. In the past couple of weeks, actually, we've lost a transgender man named Amos Bede who is experiencing homelessness in Vermont. Additionally, 15% of transgender people are living on less than $10,000 a year, which is well below the poverty line. Add to that the fact that transgender people have a hard time finding steady work and housing and healthcare because of discrimination. So, Christians, whether we're trans or not, we have our work cut out for us even in this tiny community. So, are you feeling a little stressed about all this responsibility yet? Well, we've got one more thing to take into account. What if we don't help the people who need it? Well, James chapter 4 verse 17 has some bad news for us there. It says, anyone who knows the right thing to do and fails to do it commits a sin. Our Jewish siblings have an even stronger way of communicating this. In the Talmud, Ketuvot 68a says, if a person closes his eyes to avoiding giving another charity, it is as if he has committed idolatry. Idolatry, gang! That's like the worst sin of all, according to the 10 Commandments. So we can't just close our eyes when we pull up under a freeway overpass and see somebody with a cardboard sign. We can't ignore the people sleeping on doorsteps in our cities. We can't ignore the kids who are trying to stay in school while living in shelters and being bullied for being trans. At least we can't ignore these folks and still call ourselves Christians. Jesus would not be on board with that. So let's figure out how we can take the Bible seriously. But don't worry, we don't have to do it alone, we're doing it together. If you're feeling a little overwhelmed, our Jewish siblings again have really great insight into this enormous feeling. In the Talmud, Rabbi Tarfon says, "It is not your responsibility to finish the work of healing the world, but neither are you free to desist from it." As people of faith, we are called to take our scriptures seriously. We are called to take specific and direct action to help people. So what action are you going to take today? And what action will you take tomorrow and the day after that? Some of us will work to heal the symptoms in this world, like hunger and homelessness. Other people can work at the root of the system, working against things like systematic racism and homophobia and transphobia in our theology, and economic systems that value profits over people. For me, taking the Bible seriously and enacting those principles in my life is a work in progress. Despite not being one of those people who has to deal with other kinds of discrimination like racism, I still don't have the financial resources to be able to make huge contributions to organizations. But I can reach into my pocket and pull out $1 when I see someone on the street who needs it rather than buying a candy bar later. But I'll be honest with you, I do close my eyes sometimes and it sucks. I feel crappy about it and I go to God and others later and ask for forgiveness and I work to do better next time. But we can't stop trying. We gotta keep taking baby steps, friends. It's the only way to grow. I've got 2 books to recommend to you this week, folks, that both sparked a little bit of this video. The first is Shane Claiborne's The Irresistible Revolution, which is all about how we take scripture seriously in helping others. And the second one is Marcus Borg's Reading the Bible Again for the First Time, which is all about taking the Bible seriously, but not literally. And if you're going to be at the Philadelphia Trans Health Conference this weekend, send me a message or shoot me a comment, anything like that. I would love to meet you. I'm going to be there all weekend, and on Saturday I'm going to be presenting a workshop on seeing trans and gender nonconforming folks in Scripture, so I hope to see you there. Thanks for watching the video this week, everybody. Don't forget to hit subscribe, and if I don't see you this weekend at the conference, I'll see you back here next Wednesday. Peace.